Well, franchise isn't up yet. Just for you, franchise, I'm not going to raid out. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how we do head to head. Probably not well. Oh, let's update the TJ tracker real quick. So I was wearing 2012.
All right, welcome to the Franchise Time Machine. We're about to get a raid from Ezra Denny, who very often kindly raids into us. So we're going to hold off a minute before we get started here. I think this might also be the last of our cycle of these experiments for a while. Ezra Denny, thank you so much for the raid. As always, I enjoyed watching OOTP After Dark. Welcome, Raiders. I'm also looking forward to discussion we're going to have on Ezra's stream next week with Ripley the Oriole. Ripley's raided into us a couple times, and we've had a chance to chat. Um, and also, I've chatted on Ripley's stream a few times, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Anyone who kind of likes to test the boundaries of the base
Why do
game,
you
I'm
keep
always interested to
following
see
me
how they do it
around?
and how they
Look,
think about it. So yeah, this is like the second version of that game a lot more. Yeah, it's always nice when the failed save actually works out in your favor. It's a bummer though when you lose something good because of it. Claydog1, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. Looks like we achieved some follower goal that Twitch had set for us. So thank you, Claydog. Yeah, so what we're gonna do tonight, here's an example of kind of stretching the boundaries of the base game. We've created a completely average league to test different things in the base game. And so lately we've been testing batting attributes. So everything, Ezra, even if I ever do somehow catch your follower count, there will be no eclipsing Ezra Denny. Um, oh, Barry Bash is saying hopefully he can be around for the Ripley franchise Ezra After Dark. Yeah, and it'll be on Ezra's stream, so it'll be earlier than my stream. So hopefully more people can check it out. Um, so we have this completely average league. It's 8 teams, 4 in the AL, 4 in the NL. The sub leagues are actually meaningless because no team has any kind of identity. Every player is completely average and standardized, even down to like their height and weight and their fielding attributes. Everything I could find in editor has been standardized and made average. And so the intent is anytime we change something, it's more of like a controlled experiment. And for the past week, we've been testing batting attributes. So every team gets maxed out on a particular batting attribute. And actually, let's go. We can go to the base game, and I can show you what that looks like. But power has come out to be the most dominant of the attributes, and avoid, K, and gap have been the least impactful. So today, I thought we check. Oh, so I noticed in this account, I just got knocked out of low iron. I was in the final of low iron, and I'm making a deep run into late iron. I can always tell because I also signed up for the next one, and it's 4 hours in basically. I'm still alive. So yeah, so Iron's been kind to me, especially now that we have these combinator cap tournaments. So let's pull up the latest batting ratings test. I can show you what that looks like. So in the third iteration of this, I took out power because power was clearly the most important attribute. So I thought, okay, well, let's take it out and see what happens. And that gives us a chance to get gap and avoid K in. Both of those had been in last place when they were in it, but they had never been in it together. Oh, sorry, this is the one still with. Okay, this is when we tested gap. I'll just show you this. All right, power again clearly at the top. I and Babip have been normally been coming in second and third, usually within a few games of each other though. So you can think of the attributes in tiers. Power is the top tier; it's by far the most influential. I and Babip not clear which is more important, but in the same kind of tier. And then at the bottom was Gap with a 228 win percentage and a 204 win percentage. Avoid K in the previous iteration had done almost as poorly, about 300 win percentage. And so I've created a quick start so we can easily um, generate these kinds of experiments. Where was the batting ratings for? Did I not save it? Maybe I didn't save for. That should be a bummer. These are all the different crazy experiments you get to see. Maybe I named it hitter attributes, but it should be batter attributes. No, there's no hitters. Oh, that would be a bummer if I lost that data set. I did take screenshots of it though. But yeah, so iteration 4 was testing all without power, and then so it looked a lot like this, except instead of power being the top, it was basically I and Babip were at the top, and then there was a gap, and then avoid K and gap were at the bottom. So tonight, what I wanted to do was, this is testing them in isolation. Now that we know power is the most important, I wanted to see like what happens if we do power Babip is one team, power I is another team, power avoid K is the third team, and then power gap is the last team. So it's essentially going through all the different combinations with power to see if we already know power is the most important, what then combines with power to create the most impact. So that's what we're going to do today. We'll start a new quick start game. So this is batting ratings 4 was the one with gap and avoid K together or in the league without power. So we're going to use that as a starting point. And we'll call this one now batting ratings QS 05. These will be the power combinations. Oh wait, this is this is just 5. What we'll do is once we create it, we'll save it as a quick start. That way, if we want to iterate it, we can just use that quick start over and over to do this sim as many times as we want. So we'll save it as game 5, but then we'll also save it as quick start 5 as well. Sometimes I confuse myself, and that's probably what happened. Probably forgot to save the game because I'd saved the quick start. Okay, and you see, like we changed the name of the team because when you look at team stats, for some reason it only shows the city name, and we were having to keep like remembering what team was what. So the easiest way to do this is we go into game six and we'll rename the teams first because then when we go to change the player attributes, we can just look at the team name and as a reminder like what we're doing in that team. So now all of these teams, we're just going to add power to the beginning of the name. So now it's the power avoid K Mariners, It's going to be the power BABIP Angels, power I Rangers. And I think power I is probably going to be a pretty popular bet for most which one's going to win this sim, because I know there are a lot of fans of Power I in Perfect Team. So I won't be surprised if a lot of the expectations are on this team to do the best. No, ad break. Oh, I think we're already back from the ad break. Okay. What I was saying in the chat was I would just I'll just plow through these edits real quick. So now if I ever lose track of like what am I editing, it's right there in the team name. So we'll go to the lineups, make sure we start with catcher one. And you can see here, right? It's uh oh, this is wait, is this? Oh, this is power avoid K. So they've already got the avoid K. We're just going to add the power, right? So normally this would also be 50 out of 50. Again, like everyone was totally average. But as part of the experiment, we gave them 550 avoid K. 550 is the maximum in the new game. And just as a reference for how high 550 is, if you look at 2001 Barry Bonds, that's the year he hit 73 home runs. His power is not even 550 in that season, and his I is not even 550. I think they're like 530 and 520. So it gives you a sense of 550 is still, you know, 5-7% even higher than what Barry Bonds was in 2001. So 550 is extreme. Okay, so we're going to keep the avoid K this time, and we're just going to add the power. This is the power avoid K team. Oops, I have 50. I have 50. I'm changing potential too, even though it's kind of meaningless in this sim. Development's turned off. Um, but we're going to, just to be consistent, we're going to change everything to 550. This should be fun. We're going to see tons of runs, tons of home runs, because we're going to turn the totals thing off. All the modifiers are going to turn off. But the idea is which football score is going to um, more consistently win. I think it's going to be power BABIP. Although I won't be shocked if it's power I. And chat, if y'all want to guess, now would be a good time to guess while I'm typing these edits in. It's going to be a balanced running attack. Yeah, there are going to be scores in the 20s and 30s, no doubt. Wrong sport, but the right scores, Max. I think you're on the right track with the scores. They will be football scores. Okay, so that team's done. Now we'll do the avoid K Phillies. Same thing here. They're just in different sub leagues. Max, who just swept his way through the silver soiree yesterday. Max, what's your guess? Silver soiree champion. Power avoid K, power BABIP, power I or power gap. The other sim I'm thinking about doing is the same thing with the average league, but then taking each attribute and just bringing it down to zero. I don't necessarily think it will be the opposite of what we're seeing. I think there might be different dynamics involved with taking something to zero versus taking something to 550. But that's why we do the sims to test it out. Never has a sim gone exactly as I had expected. All right, so you think I is the most important, Max? So you think Power I will have the best record? I mean, I can't really argue that. That sounds reasonable too. There is a reason Power I isn't one of the most popular shapes in Perfect Team. All right, this is now Power Babip. There's that 95 out of 95 Babip. All right, Power Babip now. And this is my bet is Power Babip. And I'll explain my thinking after I finish editing. But in the meantime, I'm hoping other people will put their guesses in the chat. Is it in modern? Yes, it's in 2023. Great question. It's in 2023. All the stadiums have been standardized with the stadium modifiers are all 1.000. All right, one more outfielder, and this team is done. Okay, one more Power Babbitt team to do. All right, definitely Power I from Max. And Power Babbitt from me. Also, I don't know if this affects anyone's guesses, but every team is running sabermetric strategy. Oh, Max's Soiree team is built on Babip Gap. Interesting. That's kind of like the next layer of combinations we might test, right? Is like if we just take power out, if we just assume, okay, we get it, power is super important, then what are the next combinations that rise to the surface? Hey Max, do you think when people see that your sorry team like sweeps its way to a championship, that then people will look at your roster and just start to copy your roster? Like I'll look at championship teams to see if I'm missing a player that like maybe I should know about that I've just kind of for whatever reason missed. But I'm assuming there are probably people out there who will do like wholesale copying of rosters. I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, it misses the fact though that like your roster matches your strategy, and they won't necessarily know your strategy. But I don't necessarily think people always understand that. Oh, you just use modern sabermetric right off the shelf? That's interesting. My strategy actually might be one of the off the shelf ones. I built it from scratch, but it's nothing to say that it might not be exactly the same as. It's probably pretty similar to yours though, Max. Like I don't like running myself out of innings. I don't like wasting outs on bunts, which I think is a pretty sabermetric approach. I am, after all, a disciple of Bill James. You use individual pitching strategies. I use them sometimes for if I get stuck with a pitcher with low with poor home run suppression in particular. I will play with their individual strategies. Clado says mostly play drafts and bronze, but started using pitch around and intentional walks a lot more, which I think sabermetric frowns on. The way I see it is the bats tend to be stacked heavier in those ones than the pitchers. And Max's all starting pitchers go 27 batters faced. So Claydog, yeah, I don't know if it fits sabermetric or not, but when I have a pitcher with poor home run suppression, I will do lots more pitching around intentional walks because I don't want them giving up gopher balls. I'd rather take the intentional walk than the home run. For your low stuff guys, yeah, if they're low stuff and high control, then I also turn I will turn pitch around up for them. That's why, as much as I like drafts, the standard tournaments are more fun because you can really dig into your strategies and stuff in a way that you can't in drafts. But if you have a guy like Clark Johnson who has 126 stuff, pitch run is off. Yeah, especially because Max, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of those high pitched guys also tend to have like moderate to poor control. And if they don't have good control, I'm definitely not pitching around with them. Dog says he just started messing around with individual sliders on pitchers. Don't even have my footing there yet. Yeah, so Clay Dog, what I do is pretty similar to what Max is describing. Although I'm not so much worried about um like the high stuff pitchers, especially if they have even moderate control. I'm not too worried about them. It's really like the poor home run suppressors that I'll go out of my way to make sure their strategies are kind of um set up to not give up home runs as much as possible. I wonder if any of the modelers have done anything to show whether or not pitching around actually helps or not. Well, that's something we could do actually. We can set up a poor home run suppressing team, right? We can give them all low HRA and high control, which is great for pitching around. And we can have one team that pitches around with those pitchers and another team that doesn't, and see if it makes a difference. That's perfect for this control league. And by control, I mean scientific control, not like pitching control. But we can definitely test that in this format. He's also unique because his HR is 41 and his PBAP is 120. All right, so he has 128 stuff, 41 HRA, 120 PBAP, and 80 control. Yeah, Clay Dog, this was interesting. We did an experiment where we tried. There are 8 preset strategies in. Oh, here I can just show you. Well, let me make these edits first, and then I'll show you. Okay, so that team's done. Those are the I nationals. Okay, we have the gap power teams left. So before we do that, let me show you on this team. Right, if you go to strategy and go to import, oh no, not import, just at the top here. Unorthodox I didn't count because that's just a random, and to me that's like no, that's the same as no strategy. But there are 8 of these, and there are 8 teams in this league. So we made each team one of the strategies. And so you have to remember, in every other way, the teams are exactly the same. The only difference is they're running different strategies. And we ran the sim like 4 or 5 times. No team rose to the top consistently. And I couldn't figure out why. And then Baffle 99, who you may see in some OTP streams, great guy, great member of the community. He also does NCAA football streams. Actually, let me give him a shout out. Shout out. Baffle 99. Give him a follow if you're interested in any of that stuff. But yes, we have rated him before. But Baffle made the amazing insight, which is your strategies are usually built on your talent. And so maybe strategy doesn't matter if all the teams are exactly the same. And that was one of those comments where I'm just like, I've been overthinking this so much that that statement I think really probably explains why we weren't seeing any patterns. I think he's probably exactly right. That if you put different strategies on the same thing, it's just not going to matter. Um, I mean, we can run it a bunch more times, but I think we ran it 4 times. Each time we well, in that case, it's just for experiments. Normally, like in this experiment today, like if you look at the standings, right, because they're 2 separate leagues and they don't play each other, there's no interleague play. We're actually getting 2 data sets from one experiment. But with that one, there were 8. So each sim only gave us 1 data set. But still, across 3 or 4 sims, there were no patterns. And I think Baffle is probably right that strategies on top of completely identical teams just isn't going to make a difference. Um, but that's not to say the experiment I just described, though, I think will matter. If you have a bunch of pitchers with low home run suppression and high control, I do think it will matter if you have those pitchers pitch around a lot or pitch around not at all. And maybe intentionally walk a lot and intentionally walk not at all. I think that's going to be worth testing out. Now that might be something maybe we do later this week. I'm actually very interested in that topic now. Oh, Max is starting to hedge. All right, now we're going to go gap power. We're going to add power to gap power. Double power. I wonder if that's why Max is starting to hedge. He's thinking about double power. Because gap power is more adaptable to all the strategies. Interesting. The other thing that I hadn't really thought about until the first time I did one of these sims is people who play online leagues are going to be interested in this stuff because it's going to help them understand where to allocate their boosts. So I'm happy to help anyone who's interested, whether you want to know how to play the base game differently, or you think it might help your perfect team performance, or if you have a online league player and you want to know where to put your boosts. Other streamers have said Gap is very Claydog saying other streamers said Gap is very stadium dependent. Some saying it's worthless in parks without the right dimensions. Is that true or not? That's actually something D Block suggested last night when we were getting our results and Gap was coming in so low. I still think because when you look at the results of the Sims, and if you think about what's happening, I still think gap power is going to trail power, and here's why. And I said I would explain why my money's on power plus BABIP. So I guess this is as good a time as any. Let me do these last few. We'll do the quick start, save the quick start, and then I'll explain my rationale. And it's not just a rationale based on intuition, it's based on all these experiments we've been running. Oops. I have to change this. Okay, so I think that's it. Is this the last team? No, we have to do the Mets. So here's the thing, and this is based on objective experimentation in this environment. Um, Here's what happens when you increase gap power is you're adding a base or two to a bunch of your base hits, but it's a team that has average batting ability. So yes, you're going to have more doubles and triples, but how much is that really worth? Right. And so when you look at the gap power teams, they lead the league with guys hitting, 60 some doubles, which is an impressive feat. There are actually very few 50 double seasons in Major League history. But you compare that to what happens when you boost power to 550, you have guys hitting 80 home runs. Right? And so I think the question asked is, would you rather have a guy hitting 60 doubles or would you rather have a guy hitting 80 home runs? The other thing that happens is those doubles, they're not adding to your batting average, but the home runs are, because your average contact is still delivering average batting average. But when you add power, those home runs are extra hits that are not included in your contact rating. So with average contact, you might hit 250. But if you're adding 40 home runs, you're adding 40 base hits. So now you're hitting 320. And so with power, you get a double benefit. And I think that's the main reason power keeps winning these sims, is because you're getting more home runs, but those home runs are extra hits that are not counted in your contact. And so your contact and power are going up at the same time. It is a design, you're right. It's a curious design choice. It's absolutely an artifact of design. It's not something like, I mean, not that you could do this in real life, but if you could, right? That's not necessarily how things would work out. But in the game, that's how it works out because that's how it's calculated. Um, and that's why I think it's important to preface it by saying this conclusion is based on experiments because we've seen it happen over and over. So Max is saying most big power. Oh, sorry, the chat scrolled. Max saying most big power guys are three true outcomes: home run, single, K. Uh, so Max, single is not true outcome. The true outcomes are home run, walk, and strikeout because the 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 um the reasoning behind that is singles can be influenced by defense. Walks and Ks and home runs are just what they are. So three true outcomes is home runs, walks, and Ks. Max says when guys are struggling hitting the ball out of the park, I think gap power supplements that struggle. Yeah, I think the rationale of the power I guys is that if they're struggling to hit, walks will still come. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I think the modeling guys have said that too. So I tend to believe the modeling guys. Claydog says he does like small ball. Oh, he's heard that bit about contact versus power. Yeah. Oh, right. That was the design choice thing. You're very conscious of the game design versus reality. You're a pretty big game nerd in that regard. Yeah. So a lot of my fascination with this is trying to suss out, like, okay, what's actually baseball related and what's actually game design related. And of course, because it's a computer game, it's mostly game design related. But Max is saying perfect example is 2022 JP Crawford versus 23 Crawford. I don't know if enough about his stats to understand that, but Class says a gap results in extra base hits. How much does speed increase or decrease that? So there is a speed factor in extra base hits. Um, but my understanding is that's not exactly how the game works. And again, I'm not a I'm not a developer, so I think um oh, Clado says the small ball part was about would you rather have 60 doubles or 80 home runs? Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like even if you asked Whitey Hurst like that, I think he would still rather have 80 home runs, even though he's a small ball manager. But I mean, even if you said 80 doubles versus 80 home runs, I don't know anyone who would take the 80 doubles, but maybe I'm wrong. Oh, Max did mean walk for three true outcomes. Um, but yeah, so let's finish up this last team here. But the game design thing is interesting. I part of this is like, my fascination with the tinkering with the base game came from, uh, one of the ways I like to play the game. Oh no, Clay Dog, don't worry about bombarding with questions. To me, uh, this stream would be super boring if it weren't for chat weighing in with comments or questions. So yeah, never apologize for asking questions in the stream. It's what makes it interesting. All right, I'm gonna just finish these edits while everyone's on the ad break. Might as well take advantage of the dead time because this is a pretty repetitive, boring task. So we'll just knock it out. And hopefully when the ads finish, we will be ready to save this quick save. And start our sim. Okay, I think ads are over. Um, yeah, sorry. So Clay, going back to your thing. No, I'm glad you've switched from lurking to asking questions. I absolutely welcome it 100%. So, uh, in fact, don't not only don't apologize, but keep asking more questions. It's great. Okay, so we're done with the edits. Oh, so Max is saying JP Crawford had 336 slugging versus 23 JP had 438 slugging. So it's hard for me to comment in isolation just slugging because to me what also matters is what's the underlying batting average. Um, I mean, of course, there's a distinct increase in extra base hits, but so I forget why are we discussing JP Crawford again? Let me scroll back up and see. Perfect example is JP Crawford. Perfect example of gap versus power. Yeah, so I guess my question to that would be: would you rather have 35 double 19 home run JP Crawford, or would you rather have 19 double 35 home run JP Crawford? Because that's the choice we're making here, roughly, right? When we're making these teams. Okay, so the last edits are done. Every team now, let's look at the profile. Every team now, instead of just having their one peak, has a peak in their primary trait, and they all have this peak in power now. And it's off the scale. Like 550 is off the scale. It's a 20 to 80 scale, and we're at 95. So it's as exaggerated as you can get. All right. So now the thing we've been doing, in case you want to do multiple iterations of this, is we're saving each one of these as a quick start. Oh, and let me make sure I've fixed this. Yes, I have. Okay. So save current game as a quick start. This is, we're going to call it batting ratings quick start '05. Oh, and every team has 550 power. And those teams also have 550 in either BABIP, avoid K, gap, or I. Okay. I'm also keeping separately on a piece of paper here a key of. It's unfortunate that for whatever reason OOTP will only let you. It's really limiting the character count on these, so I'm having to keep track separately of what each quick start is. So quick start is power plus. Okay. Oh wait, what just happened? I did save it as a quick start, right? How come? Why did these check marks come back? All right, let me make sure I still have all the edits I just made. Okay, they're still there. All right, it seems like the quick start worked. That just means I have to remember every time I do the quick start that I have to change the interruption menus. The other thing that we need to do is we need to make sure the modifiers are off, and they should be. Yep. And if you're not familiar with why these are all set to 1, I highly recommend you check out the VOD from this past Friday, where I did a demonstration based on a league full of Babe Ruths. Um, yeah, except for the times I forget to save them. That's right, Claydock. Check out that episode. It does the best job I could of explaining why you have to set these modifiers to 1 if you're doing a weird experiment like this. If you're just changing like one team in the major leagues, you probably don't need to do it. But when you're doing a thing like this where you're really playing with extremes of ratings, if you don't do this, basically the game will undo a lot of the things you're doing with your ratings. It's going to try to nerf the things you're trying to make extreme. So you have to change these to 1 and then uncheck the use auto calc of modifiers. We want these to be 1. 1, it's not that it's neutral, it's that it's no, it is kind of neutral is probably the best way to think about it, but here's the thing. Um I'll give you a quick crash course on that Friday stream, but I encourage you to check. It was the Friday afternoon stream, not the Friday night stream. And the basic concept is if you bring an entire league of Babe Ruths, OTP will try to. Oh no, Clay Dog. I'll just give you the quick version. It's fine. But definitely check out the VOD if you're interested in this stuff. I think it'll blow your mind. Um, it blew my mind when I discovered it and like proved it. Um, but if you bring an entire league of Babe Ruths together, and we use 1927 Babe Ruth who hit 60 home runs, they're not going to hit 60 home runs. They're going to hit about 25, 30 home runs each. And the reason is because the game is managing towards these totals. For 2023, these are the league totals. And however many teams you have, it's going to prorate that to the number of teams. And it's going to try to get you to hit the same number of home runs. Yes, normalize. That's the language I use. Other people call it the totals issue. It's the same thing though. It's trying to manage to a total number of doubles and home runs and hit by pitches. And anything you do to disrupt that, it's then going to change these modifiers to try to bring them up or down. And so because all these teams have power 550, here, I'll even show you. We'll auto calc the modifiers. This is what would happen if we didn't fix this. And then I just have to remember to turn it back to 1 when we finish. Okay, the modifier for home runs would be 232, 0.232. Right? So if someone was going to hit 60 home runs, they're only going to hit about 15 or 13 or 15 home runs because if everyone's hitting 60 home runs, then that's average, and it's going to treat 60 as average, which is around 20 home runs. So it's going to take everyone down. And because we have that avoid K team, there's not enough strikeouts. So now it's going to make everyone strike out more. And so what these modifiers are doing is they're basically kind of undoing everything we're doing by making people have 550 ratings. And so it just kind of screws with our results. So this is how. So Clayton's asking, does that take era year into effect when you do an auto calc? So these totals are for 2023, but the multipliers you can think of are how you would turn 2023 into a dead ball era or into a 1968 era. But also in 1968, they're going to have different totals here, right? So the totals are what OTP is targeting. So yeah, so you can turn 2023 into 1968 by changing the modifiers, or if you just select 1968, it'll just have different totals, and those totals will be like nerfed or not compared to 2023. That's kind of the easiest way to think about it. All right, so change everything back to 1. I think we're good. Yeah, so the modifier is built to execute towards those totals. And I always thought the total thing was going to be more behind the scenes. I didn't realize it was going to be right out in the open where you can adjust it. And so that's great, though. At least it's there so we can fix it. I mean, I say fix. OOTP designed it this way for a reason. I think their assumption was people don't want leagues turning into football score leagues, right? And so they're trying to bend the data towards what's normal for 2023, which I get. But for someone like me, and probably also for Ripley, who's doing these experiments and bringing people in from different eras, I don't want to bring in a bunch of Babe Ruths and then have them not hit like Babe Ruth. I want them to play like Babe Ruth. And so I want to set these modifiers to 1. So however many home runs he's going to hit, let him hit them. All right, so let's go to standings. This is how we do our sims. I did do the quick save. All right, so 2023 unfortunately starts in late March. So we do a month, it's just going to sim 2 games. So we'll just get past those 2 games and then we'll do a full month. Wow, so far, everyone's 1-1. That's interesting. Very small sample size, though. Let's do a full month. Ooh, Power I off to a big head start in the National League, and Power BABIP is leading the AL. Okay, these standings are interesting. BABIP is all over. BABIP is second in the AL, last in the NL. I is leading both leagues. Uh, there's no consistency other than I. So let's do another month. This is only 1 month, so can't tell a lot yet. Well, I is running away with it in the NL, and is starting to run away with it in the AL too. Power Gap is last place in the AL, but second place in the NL. So that's interesting. Look at the league leaders in batting average are both in the 440s. We had a 62 game on base streak and a 61 game on base streak. Those are not unusual for these simulations, by the way. 53 game hitting streak. All right, I still way ahead in both leagues. And I am prepared with an explanation for I too. Um, but we'll get to that at the end of the sim. The home run leaders are in the 80s in the NL, 70s in the AL, and we're only in July. Not a 19 consecutive game on base streak, but 19 consecutive on base streak. So that means 19 straight plate appearances. This player on base, and I bet this is a Power I team player. So average infielder 6 from the Power I Rangers. Yep. So this supports. So I think my rationale for explaining Power I, that supports it. So I am ready to explain it at the end of this sim. Normally I say like let's do a couple more, but I think at this point it's very clear that I is at the top. What's unclear is everything else is at a logjam following it. Kleto says one thing I've wondered since watching these streams is if the normalization to the intended total with the modifier taking the entire league's ratings and expectations is something that also affect tournaments and perfect team. We've talked about that actually, Claydog. That's a great observation. The first thing to consider is that my understanding is that there are at least two simulation engines. There's a base game engine and a perfect team engine. They are similar but not identical. And then within perfect team, what's not clear to me is whether it's another engine or it's just another kind of set of settings for the same engine. But there's a league, perfect team league engine and a perfect team tournament engine. And if they're similar to this, unless someone is setting the modifiers to 1, which doesn't seem likely because the default in the base game is to let the modifiers be the modifiers, that this should be happening in tournaments too, where the population of cards in the tournament will then define the modifiers, which will then either nerf or boost certain um, statistics. And so, but it's complicated, right? Because you have that dynamic going on at the same time you have power creep going on. And so, and you have new cards coming in. So I think it's probably hard to tell whether the weird things people are seeing are based on the influx of new cards or whether it's because normalization or frankly, whether it's just random number generator stuff. Right? In base game, if you're simulating a whole league, RNG is going to kind of tend to even out. But in a tournament setting in particular, RNG can look crazy just because it's such a small sample size, relatively speaking. Pitcher or hitter first ones would be good ones to look at for that. Yes, that is true because you have uh, great hitters and then poor pitchers, or great pitchers and poor hitters. And so, yeah, but frankly, even in the standard drafts where you have perfect cards playing with iron cards, this is going to be happening. And so that's why I keep doing these sims, partly because my own curiosity, and I think the results are always interesting. But also, I play Perfect Team a lot, and anything I can learn about how the simulation engines work, I think will help my understanding of how to draft and pick rosters. And frankly, I don't know that it'll teach us enough to help make better rostering decisions or drafting decisions. I just think it'll help us understand some of the weird outcomes that happen. And that's not a great function, but I think it's better than nothing. All right, so let's jump back to the sim here. We're at August 1st, and you can see in the league leaders, we're already hitting an insane number of home runs. Right, the major league leader has 90 home runs at this point. I'm guessing this is a power BABIP player. Oh, it's a power. Oh, that makes sense. It's a power of Void K player. That makes total sense. I would not be surprised if most of the top 7 is also not power of Void K. Oh, power BABIP. That was my initial guess. Okay. At 83 home runs. Power. Oh, they're all over the place. That is surprising to me and very interesting. Power Gap. Power I. Okay. That surprised me. Okay. All right. They are all over. That's very interesting. Okay. But we're at 90 home runs and we're at 132 games. So someone's hitting 100 home runs for sure. Because we still all of August and all of most of September to go. All right. So let's play. Teach laptop how to do this. Oh, yeah. So the matrix is a perfect example. If you don't turn the modifiers off for the matrix, you're going to have weird things getting nerfed and boosted. But here's the thing though. I love what Lap does. I would never think to even suggest to him to do this because people love the Matrix. I love the Matrix. I don't want to see it change. That said, if I were to do the Matrix, I would do it this way. But my intent is not to ever suggest that he do it differently. No, you're joking. I know, but it's a great point. Like I think I think it's a great observation that the Matrix is a great example of how this can change the results significantly. Um, and it also, I think, kind of explains why at first none of my Matrix guesses were even close. And I think it's because I was estimating what it would be with with the modifiers turned off because I didn't know about the modifiers at the time. And so as I've done more of this, I'm like, oh, okay, what would my guesses be with modifiers on is what I have to submit for my matrix guesses. Okay, so we're at September 1st now. We have a 103 game winning team already in the Power I Nationals. So let's do another month here. Well, let's go to the end of the regular season, I should say. I'm thinking we're going to have at least, oh, we can see already here. Yeah, I was going to say we're going to have at least 120 home runs hit by somebody. And we do. All right, so we have one game left. Let's finish that. So what's interesting to me is the Power I team, without a doubt, even with just two data sets, right? Because like each sub league is a data set, um, is clearly the dominant combination. What's interesting that the other three are just like a mass. I don't think you can statistically significantly say any of them is better than the others right now. You'd have to run this as close as they are. You probably have to run it 1,000, 10,000 times, which is not uncommon to do, right? In a Monte Carlo analysis, 10,000 would be probably on the low end, um, to see what would happen. But it's interesting the Power I is so far ahead. And so before we jump into the stats, here's my rationale for that. So the way power boosts power and batting average, right? With power, you're adding home runs and you're adding hits. Well, BABIP would add more hits to that, but I is adding a whole nother set of offensive bonuses that aren't covered at all by the power thing. So with power, you get home runs and extra hits, and then I is piling on walks on top of that. My initial guess of power and BABIP, I was thinking like the BABIP would then uh, multiply the extra hits on top of what you're already getting, but the magnitude of that is going to pale in comparison to the sheer number of walks you can get from I. And so I think that's why with Power I, you're getting so many extra base runners, and then you're hitting bombs that the Power I teams are just dominating. So I think that's what's going on. And just like Gap only adds extra bases to the hits you're already getting, I is the opposite. It's adding extra base runners no matter what, and a big number of those too. Clay Dog saying, I'd be curious to see if a bigger breakdown of top home run raters, like top 20 or 30, to see if there's more. I agree. That's one of the things I wanted to go in and do is look at the league leaders. But first, let's look at the team stats. That usually tells us a lot too. Because if they're all equal, walks before home runs working better makes sense. With massive power, anyone on base is huge. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I think from a home run hitting perspective, power I may not be on top. But from a team perspective, power I is huge because you have so many extra base runners to be driven home by the home runs. So it's going to translate to way more wins. But for just sheer number of home runs hit, all the I is doing is giving you maybe extra at bats. With power avoid K, though, depending on how the game engine calculates home runs, if avoid K is good, then you're not losing at bats to strikeouts, and maybe that gives you more chances to hit home runs. I don't know. Um, but now I'm starting to understand why it was such a mishmash in the home run leaders is because if everyone has 550 power, all of the other things are probably noise or close to noise in terms of like who's going to lead the league in home runs, other than maybe getting more at bats. And if power I is leading, I think it's probably because of extra at bats. If it's power K, it's probably because you're not losing as many at bats to home runs or to strikeouts, so therefore you have a few more chances at home runs. I'll be surprised if power gap or power BABIP are overrepresented in the home run leaders. But this is always a fun exercise to. Well, let's save this before I forget, like a dummy, like last time. Okay, so we've got this results here saved. Okay, so let's go to the stats. If you haven't done this, this is interesting to do in any experiment. Go to the team statistics and then batting statistics. We'll look at the pitching stats too. Claydog says once you get the hierarchy of rating matches, you can start mixing teams with different profiles and add 10x as much work to each set. Right. The goal is to minimize the work and maximize the understanding. That said, I would like to share the quick start someday once I've worked out all the bugs so that people can do their own experiments. I think that way I don't have to do all the work. Other people can do the work and then hopefully they'll share the results of this in the Discord. Um oh yeah, Claydog, if you're interested in this stuff, I've been sharing a lot of the outcomes on the Discord and some of the other people have been sharing like the results of their sims. And so it's been a great give and take of experimental and simulation sharing. So let me share the link to that in here. No, this is the franchise time machine Discord. We're sharing experimental results in there. And I did try sharing a couple of results in the general OOTP Discord, but I think because people don't necessarily understand the background we're doing, I got a lot of like nitpicking the methodology, and it's all stuff that like we've explained in the stream. So instead of like looking at the results and like trying to glean insights from the results, there were comments kind of more like saying, "Oh, you should do this instead." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, we covered that in the stream." Right? But so it's just kind of like I think it's the wrong audience maybe. At least on our Discord, it's mostly people who have heard some of the streams and so understand like what we're working towards um and so some of the things that would have been pushed back on in the general Discord, I think people are like, "Oh yeah, that's like the next set of experiments," or yeah, they've explained that as like why this is this is going to be this way. So unfortunate but not surprising. Yeah, I in hindsight I should have known better because I've seen the same dynamic on the forums too, where instead of like and don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people who I think appreciate stuff that people put on the forums and the Discord, but there's always people who like it seems like their first instinct is to nitpick or pick apart stuff. And it was just kind of frustrating because it's stuff that we'd already talked about on the stream, and I'm like, yeah, okay. I can't put all that context into the post, so yeah, you're right, Clay Dog. It is not an OTV thing, it's an internet culture thing, exactly. Yeah. And so the more I think within our Discord, the franchise time machine Discord, everyone's more on the same page. And I'm hopefully like there'll be more like, and don't get me wrong, I don't want people to not question what we're doing. What I would what I would like though is for people like look at the results and so P Boom is great at this. I don't know if P Boom's in the chat tonight, but uh P Boom is Spets on Discord. She's great at like looking at these stat pages and he'll be like, "Oh, look at this and look at that." And he's like finding all these interesting things before I can. And like to me that's great. And the reason I share them in Discord is like I want his brain power and other people's brain power to be like, "Oh, did you notice this thing?" And chances are I didn't because 50 pairs of eyes are better than one. And so that's the spirit in which I'm sharing these things is, you guys are going to find stuff that I missed for sure. And even just in, like a couple streams, P Boom found tons of stuff that I would have overlooked and led to like really good discussion and really good insights in like what might be happening. So yeah, so this is interesting. This goes to the home run leader discussion, Clay Dog. The fact that all four of these teams have very similar home run totals. And so, right, the sim is based on wins. Oh, good. I'm glad you find it fun. Um, yeah, and I appreciate your kind words, Clay Dog. Some nights there's no one on here, or there are, but they're all lurking or away from keyboard. And I'll do sims. I'm like, I don't know if anyone cares. And then there's like nights like tonight or nights when like P Boom's on, where there's like really good chat, and it makes me like remember like, oh yeah, there are other people who dig this stuff and are gonna find it interesting, so it's worth doing. Um, but if you look at these home run totals, right, Power I rose to the top in terms of wins, but not necessarily most home runs hit, right? Power Gap Power hit more home runs. Power BABIP hit more home runs. And actually, if you look at it, in the NL, Power I hit the fewest home runs. In the AL, Power I hit the second fewest home runs. But they're winning tons of games because look at the walks, right? They have so many extra base runners that they have over 1,000 more runs. Look at that, 1,000 more runs in the AL than the other teams. It's a little less so in the NL. In the NL, they're 600 ahead of the Avoid K team, but over 900 ahead of the Gap Power team, right? So the walks are leading to runs, which is why they're rising to the top of the standings. But in terms of hitting more home runs, they're all hitting home runs around the same clip. So Power I is no better at hitting home runs than Power Gap or Power BABIP. It's just they're better at winning games. So that's an important distinction to keep in mind. Um, that even during the sim I forgot about. Right? I'm like, oh man, they must be crushing the ball, and it's not. They're crushing games because they have more base runners to drive in. Oh, this is also interesting. Um, Power I has the fewest doubles. So all the teams are hitting around the same amount of home runs, but Power I is not hitting doubles. Now, of course, Power Gap is going to hit the most doubles, but despite hitting fewer extra base hits, Power I is dominating games because they're walking so many times. That is really interesting. Why are they hitting fewer doubles though? That is wild to me. And again, Power Gap aside, Power Gap you expect to hit more doubles than they did. Huh. Look at this. So many more plate appearances just from all the walks and the base runners. Less hits in general, that's right. No, you're right. In the AL, Power I is last place in hits, and in the NL also last place in hits. Um, Now their OPS is the highest because when you factor in all the walks, yeah, it is a little more pronounced in the L. And I think the NL AL differences should just be RNG. Um, because all the dynamics and all the players are essentially clones of each other between the leagues. Um, this also goes to the whole thing around how OPS usually does carry the day, right? Like the Power I teams are leading OPS and they're winning the most games. Granted, they're also leading in runs. That has more to do with it, probably, but the higher OPS is certainly contributing to more runs. Also, an interesting artifact of all this is, of course, Avoid K has the fewest strikeouts. I'm a little surprised, and I'm not sure why, that Power BABIP has the most strikeouts. Power BABIP has the most strikeouts in both leagues. Claydock says, obviously, we'd have to run this a few times. For sure, Claydock. There are going to be other things that we'll notice if we run this more times. But I think the less hits correlation is most likely the most likely thing for extra bases. Yeah, that could be. That could be. Is BABIP causing him to swing more often? Hmm. See, I think the reason to me was surprising is, oh, maybe I'm thinking about it wrong. Is there a way to find that stat? So, unfortunately, in the team stats, there's not a ton of. It doesn't. You don't have the options of like when batting stats, when you do batting stats one and batting stats two. And it definitely doesn't have like the value stats like you have in Baseball Reference. Let's look at the pitching stats. One interesting thing that we've noticed in the past is the pitching stats in some ways reflect the opposite of the batting stats. So if you're team I, your pitcher should give up the fewest walks because they're the only pitchers who never have to face the high I batters. And so like you see that, right? The team I pitchers give up the fewest walks, not because they have better control, but because they're not having to face the high I batters. And the same thing is with like avoid K should have the most strikeouts, and they do. But sometimes by looking at stuff, we notice some weird. Oh, the other thing we should look at is the calendar. The reason for that is let's go in as one of the power I teams, and then let's look at their calendar, and let's just look at the scores. All right, so there's a 39 to 18 score here, a 40 to 16, but then every once in a while you get a 2 to 9 here. Like here's a football score, 28 to 24. Right, 4 touchdowns against 3 touchdowns and a field goal. One of the craziest things I ever saw was in that Friday afternoon session I was telling you about. It was the year 2000 Jose Lima and the 2001 Barry Bonds are the only two players in this league, clones of those players. And so, tons of home runs being hit. We turned the modifiers off. And yet, in one game, one of the Jose Lima pitching staffs shut out a Barry Bonds lineup and threw a 3-hitter. It was like one of the most improbable things I've ever seen. And so ever since then, I always like to look at the calendar to see if there's any like weird like scores to look at. Oh, here's back-to-back 31-13 games. No, Claydog does remember that. 43-19. There's very few of the low end outliers, though. I'm noticing that was it 7-2 or something. That 7-9. That was probably the lowest. Five. Here's a 5-9. 14-10 in extra innings. That means one of the teams scored 4 runs in extras. 44-27. Here's a 30-27 extra inning game. Yeah, Scorigami Claydog has been mentioned. It's true. What I don't think I've seen yet is I don't think I've seen a 60-run game. I could be wrong. I should go back and look at the. If it was going to happen, it would have been in the Bonds and Lima sim. I don't think I've seen a 60, and not 60 total, but like one team scoring 60 runs. Yeah, so no shutouts. Oh, the other fun thing, and this is P Boom was the first one to suggest it, and it's been great. Is we look at the achievements now. That are called accomplishments here. So here are all the 3 home run games. And let's see how many 4 home. Oh my goodness, this is the longest scroll I've ever had to do. These are all 3 home run games. I'm still scrolling. I'm still scrolling. I'm still scrolling. I'm still scrolling. And look at all these 4 home run games. We might actually be able to count these. Oh, 5 home run games. Okay, here's a good way to look at this. For the 5 home run games, one is power void K, one is power BABIP, and one is power I. But I think the easiest way to see that, as far as just purely hitting home runs, that there is no pattern is when you look at this, right? Like that the home run totals are also tight. So as far as just hitting home runs, it doesn't necessarily seem to matter whether you're power I or power BABIP, power void K. It's really like power I helps you win more games though. Which when you're playing perfect team, that's what you want, right? You don't necessarily want more home runs, you want more wins. And so power I, there's definitely now support for all those perfect team players who are big power I people. This supports that is a good intuition or a good instinct to go for those players. So Claydog feels like he's hit 60 against team with no. Yes, the gym unknowns for sure you can hit 60 against for sure. Um, because the gym unknown pitchers are even below average. But in this league, you have to face at least average pitchers. Right. So, oh, I lost the sort when I moved away. That's interesting. So let's do the sort again. And let's look at these 5 home run games and then the 4 home run games. So many 4 home run games. That's insane. And again, I'm seeing a pretty good spread of different BABIP, I, gap, avoid K, gap. I mean, no one seems to be over or underrepresented here. But yeah, the fact that there are so many 3, 4, and 5 home run games is great. 6 hits. Yeah, this should happen because home runs are extra hits that are not really accounted for normally. So here's some 7-hit games and an 8-hit game. Now, was this extra innings? August 9th, 2023. So Power Avoid K Phillies, August 9th. Let's go to their schedule. Let's look at August 9th. Wait, they didn't have a game August 9th. Was I looking at the wrong date? 8 hits. Oh, August 29th. August 29th. No, it's a regulation game. And only 8 innings for them because they're the home team. In 8 innings, he got 8 hits. That's awesome. 8 for 8. 5 runs, 5 RBI. Of course, no strikeouts. This team struck out once. They had 27 hits and struck out once. Yeah, now that's a game. Exactly. And this poor catcher stranded 10 runners. And here's a team. Now they're just average of avoid K, right? Because the only one team has super low high avoid K. They struck out 15 times. This team struck out once. Yeah, his teammates are definitely giving a hard time. How did you strand? Well, this other guy stranded 8 somehow. They scored. So let's look at it this way: they scored 33 runs and they stranded 29 runners. That's awesome. All right, let's go back to the achievements. Now, one thing that's going to happen is there's going to be no ERA leader because no pitcher can pitch enough innings because they just get chased too soon. So this should be blank. 15K performances, but here should be blank. Cycles might be. Wow, look at all these cycles. 10 cycles. Now these are BABIP, BABIP, GAP, Avoid K. I mean, Avoid K is a little underrepresented, but this is a pretty small sample size. Of course, there'll be no hitters. Oh, we found this out. 50 home run season, 150 RBS seasons don't populate until after you finish the postseason for some reason. Hitting streaks did though. 58 game hitting streak from Power Babbitt team. That makes sense. And it's interesting though, like most of the long hitting streaks are Power Babbitt, right? But there's a few Power Avoid Ks in there. So that gives you a clue as to like what's happening. You almost lost us the game. Sorry, that was I was a little late reading that. That was back from when we were talking about the 10 stranded runners. That one 33 run game. Um okay, so let's finish out the regular season, then we'll do a save. I think this is a good simulation though. I think it's very clear. Power Rise the top. I think we understand why. It's the run production. But the really interesting thing is none of these combinations seems to create more home runs. It's just it creates more runs. That's an important takeaway. Out of curiosity, do you export your reports and check them in a database to find more patterns? I do not. I should though. That's a good idea. Um, that is a good suggestion, and that's actually something I should just put into the Discord so that if people want to run their own analysis, they can. Um, that's a great suggestion. I usually just look through them in game just to look for patterns to inform the next sim. Um, if I were to sit down and do a more in depth, then yeah, absolutely, I would instead of eyeballing it in the game, I would do analytics in a spreadsheet or a database. You're a year and a half into an IT degree, going back to school, and every SQL class, you're like, I need to use this for OTP. Yeah, exactly. People are really good about sharing what they're doing with modeling in the game. And every time I see them, like, oh, I should do something like that. But then I'm like, I'm so busy doing other stuff. And frankly, they've done it better than I could ever do it. So I just watch their VODs and I'm just like, oh, yeah, that's really cool. Um, in particular, um, Warbot TBD and Isadafo, they do a lot of modeling and they share their results. And when they're not rating cards, they usually have these really interesting streams where they share their models and highlight things that are kind of um, have confused them. It's like from the results, and they're wondering like, is there a problem in the game? Is there a problem in the model? And I really like watching them kind of deconstruct that. Oh, that's why you haven't tried this and watched you for the same reason. Yeah, that's great. Like, the community is so deep in people playing the game different ways. You can usually find people who are doing the thing you want to do, and then either they'll inspire you to go do it yourself, or you'll be like, oh, they've done it. I'm just gonna watch them. So I watch Charles all the time. Yeah, here I'll give you a shout out to Charles. Definitely throw him a follow. Yeah. Um, so he has. I've basically seen him do two or three kinds of streams. One is he and Isadafa will rate the new cards that come out each week. Um, they'll do roster building episodes, but my favorite is when they bring out their models and show each other the models and start questioning like results they're getting. And I do like that when they question it. Yes, they're questioning whether there's an issue with the game engine, but they also question whether their model is accurate, which I think is good because it shows that they're open minded enough to think that like part of the problem might be in what they're doing, not necessarily just what the game is doing. Um, so yeah, so that I watch them a lot for modeling. Um, and I think also earlier in the cycle, I don't know if they've done it as much, but I Rock This is sharing some models that they'd built and some results they were getting. So I thought that was cool too. But yeah, especially because I don't even use SQL Claydog. When I do my modeling, it's in Excel, so I don't even like to call it modeling. But that's how my brain works like Excel because I used to be a consultant, and as consultants, we used to communicate using PowerPoint, and we used to think using Excel. Was the saying, and so I can kind of scratch the surface, but it's really cool to see Charles and Isadafo doing like pretty in-depth modeling on their streams. So yeah, if you're into that, I highly recommend checking them out. The card rating episodes are interesting, but really like where I like to watch them is when they're doing their modeling stuff. It's really cool. So yeah, so let's finish the postseason. Playoffs begin. I like to watch the tree, so we'll just watch the tree. Yeah, this is unusual that we have such a. It's usually like, I mean, in the past it's been Power Babbitt, Power Babbitt. So this is fun to see an assortment in the playoffs. Claire said that makes a lot of sense. Never really had to use Excel, so now you just touch it a bit for importing data from Excel to access MySQL. Yeah, and if I were better at databases, Claydog, I wouldn't touch Excel either. I would do it all in SQL. Oh, this is interesting. It's the it is well. I mean, I guess it's to be expected. It's the Power I teams that advanced, right? Because we know they generate more runs. Now the question is, now this should just be a coin flip because they're essentially identical. Which Power I team is going to win? Wow, and they get a gentleman's sweep, even though they are identical, which again is RNG and small sample size. So NL baby, who's your team, Clay Dog? Wow, our game score because we're following one of the Power I teams is a 1376, which is one of the higher game scores we've seen. Oh, you're a Brewers fan in Madison. Oh, so you've had to switch from AL. You've had to switch leagues, right? All right, so that season's done. Now we can go in and look at those achievements, and we'll see if there are any there. Not in your lifetime, but historically, yeah. Um, so let's look at those accomplishments. You grew up all NL and hate the DH. Yeah, one thing I miss about the DH when I used to play the base game with the DH off because I would always do the Mets is once you learn how to do a good double switch, it just feels like a piece of art when you pull off a good double switch or a triple switch. And I miss doing that in the base game. So here's one thing I want to look at in the 50 home run seasons. In one of the previous sims, there was a really weird shape. And by that I mean you would expect this to be tapered, right? There should be more 50 home run seasons and then fewer 60 home run seasons, fewer still 70, and it should be like a pyramid. And the, 90 and 100 home run seasons should be the most rare. But in one of the sims, there was like a huge bulge in the 80 home run uh, tier, which by no kind of statistics. Oh, here's another one. Why is this happening? You have here's the 50 home seasons. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I think 12 or 13, 15 home run seasons. And then you have about as many 60 home run seasons. And then you only have 6, 70 home run seasons. And then look at all these 80 home run seasons. Like that shape makes no sense to me. And then there's a ton of 100 home run seasons. So there's some sort of weird dynamic causing right because normally you would expect the distribution to taper and it's got all these weird bulges. There's bulges at 80 and 100. So that means there's some sort of underlying mechanism causing that distortion. Yeah, it is odd, right? That shape should not be. It should be more of like a normal this is a weird distribution. And we had a tie for the home run lead at 124. This is the second time we've seen this though, this kind of weird distribution. Let's look at the league leaders again. Oh, so one in the AL and one in the NL each hit 124. Yeah, I guess second time isn't that abnormal. Yeah. I mean, all of these sims could stand to be repeated for sure. But to your point though, Clay Dog, if we did this a bunch of times and the long run distribution does not look more normal, I would question what's going on. And not that I think something's wrong. I think what it is reflecting some dynamic of these combinations that's for some reason like forcing a huge number of higher home run totals. But one thing I want to look at is, and this is a bummer because normally in all the other tables you can see the team pretty easily, but you know what? It says Oakland, Atlanta. I need to we should consider changing the three-letter abbreviations too, so that when we go through this, we can see like which team is it. Okay, so this is power gap. Oh, and now the sort gets undone. So yeah, what a pain in the butt. I was hoping to do a quick way to see like, but again, I go back to the team stats. I don't think there'll be any patterns for the higher home run totals because there's no pattern for the home run totals. Here are the 150 RBI seasons. Yeah, Clay Dog, exactly. I'm bored with you on that. There's some equation somewhere that's kicking in that's preventing a normal district. Oh my goodness. A 322 RBI season. We're gonna pause for ad breaks. I think ads are over. I think it's interesting that these high RBI totals are not the highest home run totals. Like 104 and 107, they're still pretty far from the 124 that led the league, yet they had the most RBIs. Let's see what's going on with this guy. Um, he was playing second base for the Power I Rangers. Makes sense as a Power I team because they scored the most runs. Led the league in plate appearances with 881. Scored 333 runs, 322 RBIs, and 258 walks. Almost hit 400, 1573 OPS. Now all the wars are deflated because it's wins against uh wins above replacement, right? Well, all the other replacements are also hitting a ton of bombs, so the wars are a little nerfed. Modern team management of workloads and hate this league. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's almost 900 players, but I mean they gave him 23 games off. It's just they're walking so many times. He's getting on base a ton. But let's look at this team's. I have average infielder one's autograph. What's up, Nolan? Nolan, I don't know if you've been lurking, but you just missed some craziness. Um, we were simulating all the different combinations of power with other attributes: power I, power Babbitt, power gap, and power void K, with the modifiers off. Power I ran away with it, but check out some of these achievements. And all credit to P Boom, who I think was the first one to suggest that we look at these. Avoid K is useless as a stat. We're starting to find that out. Um, 50 home run seasons. How about 124 home run seasons? And Clay Dog and I were just talking about this. Look at the number of 100 home run seasons. Right, it's almost the whole screen. Yet there are only one, two, three, four, five, six 70 home run seasons. So there's this weird shape again in the distribution of home run totals that it could be RNG, but it does seem suspicious. And 80 home runs does take up the whole screen. He gave them all aluminum bats. No, all the stadium factors are one. We made that correction early in the corked barrels. Yeah, so no, the reason we're looking at that player is if you look at the RBI totals, he led the league in RBIs, and we're just wondering he didn't have the most home runs, so we're just wondering what the dynamic was. So he had 322 RBIs, but and I say only, but it's compared to 124. He only had 104 home runs. So we click through to him, and so now I want to look at the Power Eye Ranger stats. And he also didn't lead the team in OPS. Yeah, he led the league in runs and walks for sure, and plate appearances. So he got a lot of opportunities. And that might be it. Might be as simple as that. He may have just gotten the most opportunities. The other thing we saw. Oh, one of the things we saw is in one of these power teams, some dude hit 269, and everyone else was hitting like over 330. So yeah, his teammate hit 400 and had 764 plate appearances, but so he was batting third. Average infielder one was batting fifth. Hmm. Oh, he still had over 100 more plate appearances than that dude, though. So even though that guy hit 406 with a higher OPS, he had 120 fewer plate appearances, so that many fewer chances for RBIs. Yeah, so he had 280 RBI. I bet if you give him 120 more plate appearances, he would reach 320 also. So the funny thing is, I bet if we look at the pitching, oh yeah, look at these whips. Whips above two. I mean, this Cy Young Award winner here has a 1.91 whip. Yeah, what a god. The golden arm of starter five with his 1.91 whip. Actually, we should see who does win the Cy Young Award. They will give out awards. But we'll go to the if you look at the pitching stats, there should be no ERA uh totals because no one qualifies. Yeah, see, this is where ERA normally is, and it's blank because no one qualified. If we do all players, oh yeah, it's gonna have zero ERAs. It's gonna have like people who did mop up duty. So yeah, so no one qualified because everyone got chased too fast. These streams always remind me of a SB Nation post back in the day called "A League of Our Clones." Oh yeah, someone brought that up recently too. So if they did that in OOTP, the reason I was thinking about that recently was they must have known to turn the modifiers off because I remember in the article it was like there were a bunch of really long extra inning games because no one could score runs. If they had not turned modifiers off, the Cologne should have been hitting like 250. And so there shouldn't have been such long games. The fact that they had super long games because no one was scoring means they knew enough to turn off the modifiers. Or or maybe OOTP wasn't managing to totals back then. And so managing totals might be a newer thing because I think that article was like maybe a decade old at this point. Nolan says SC Nation is now secret base, and they did the same thing with a team of Shohei Otani. Oh, is that true? Oh, that's awesome. Oh, the SB. Okay, the SB Nation poster for the show. Got it. Yeah, and doing a team of Otanis is not that different from our experiment with like the Babe Ruth and Jose Limas. It's just the opposite, right? Instead of like a league full of players who couldn't hit, like the Colognes, it's a league full of teams that could hit. But I like that every time we do on these sims, like there's no one qualifying for ERA, but there will still be a Cy Young winner, so we should find out who wins that. Let me make sure my mail is set up to get those notifications. So it is okay. So let's go to. I mean, Great Glove is going to be kind of meaningless. It's just that someone has to win them. Wait, where are my awards? Oh, news from the entire world. Our team maybe did not win a Great Glove Award, which is why we didn't get the. Wait, where is my mail for it? Normally we get a mail. Well, okay, we did get reliever of the year, but where was my notification for Great Gloves? That's weird. Okay, reliever of the year. This stud wins it with 9 saves and an 11.5 ERA. Average starter 1 in a closer role. Clay Dot saying, "Are you saying the Bartolo with the whole home run could not hit?" Yeah, that's the funny thing, right? It was they're using the Bartolo who hit the home run, and they're still having like 30 inning games because no one can score. Uh, and the AL, oh, this guy's even better. He had 4 whole saves with an 11.14 ERA. It was in 2016. That sounds about right. Okay, let's see. He had 78 games, 2.06 whip. How do I see his blown saves? Oh, you know what? I bet if I go to the team and then go to um, pitching stats 2. Oh, actually, the number of blown saves is not that high. Oh, maybe because no one's coming in save situations. That might be why. It might be there are no saves to be blown. Yeah, the blown save totals are surprisingly low, right? Okay, let's sim to Platinum Stick Awards. Hard to have saves when there are a few opportunities due to blood. Yeah, I think that's right, Nolan. That's probably right. Oh, Talik's raiding in. Thank you very much for the raid. Hope you had a good stream. I've actually been watching you from time to time with your Vegas save, and I think you even had a three. Did your team win 3 games in a row today? I think I saw that. Here's what we're doing in our little corner of the world. We created a completely average league where we can do experiments. So there are 8 teams in the league. four in the AL, four in the NL. Every player is exactly identical and exactly average. Oh, you had your first sweep. Congratulations. I think that, yeah. So I saw the third win of that sweep. And then I think you had to rest a bunch of players because they were all fatigued. So yeah, so we built this average league with average players. And then what we did was in editor, which is a cool function if you play in commissioner mode, you can change players. And so what we did was um, each team is maxed out in a certain attribute, whether it's power or BABIP or I. And we learned pretty quickly that power is the most important attribute. So then tonight, what we're doing is we're testing out, okay, what combined with power is the most important? And power I ran away with it in both experiments here. They won 113 games and hit a ton of home runs and scored a ton of runs. The interesting thing was they didn't hit more home runs than any teams, but they scored way more runs because of the I. They had way more base runners on base when they hit those home runs. Um, yeah, Wayne, I know you were having problems with drops in our stream yesterday too. I have not heard of anyone having drops. And the fact that you're still having problems, I wonder if it's something on your Twitch. Okay, Nolan says his are fine. So what we're doing is we're looking at the postseason awards because even though these players are identical, because of random number generator, there are going to be variations in performance. So we wanted to see like who wins the Cy Young Award, who wins the MVP. Um, and we were just looking at this before you guys rated in. This is pretty funny. If you look at the pitching stats, there's no one in ERA because no one in this league can last long enough to get enough innings to qualify. So we have no ERA leader. So it'll be interesting to see who wins the Cy Young Award where there's no ERA leader. All right, so we're going to sim ahead to the next award, which is Rookie of the Year. These are all rookies, so everyone should be eligible. Oh, you know what? No one's eligible because I made them all have the same experience, and it was more than one season, so none of them are rookie eligible. So they're all the same. They're the same height. They're the same weight. They all have the same major league experience. And then the only thing we change are the things we want to experiment with. All right, so let's. The next award will be the Cy Young Award. All right, now let's see which of these pitchers managed to win the Cy Young Award. Again, everyone's identical, but someone's got to win. Okay, 8-6 record with an 11.42 ERA. Average starter number 5 from the Power Eye Rangers wins the Cy Young Award. They had a 1.91 whip. And, I think they won just on virtue of having the highest war of 4.3. Their opponent batting average was a 290, and they won the Cy Young Award. All right, now let's see who wins the MVP. We'll sim ahead to that. Oh, what's the highest strikeout count among pitchers? Let's look at that next, Clay Dog. Good question. All right, we have an MVP winner. Oh, you know what? We didn't look at the NL Cy Young Award winner. The NL Cy Young Award winner also had 8 with, but with a stellar 10.02 ERA, besting the AL Cy Young Award winner by a full run. So Clayton, I think you're right. If the highest K count among pitchers should be someone um on the team on the avoid K team because they're getting strikeouts from everybody else. All right, MVP is infielder number one, again from the Power Eye Rangers. We looked at him before 104 home runs, 322 RBI. Now, it only looks like he had 600 at bats, but he had over 800 plate appearances. All right. And then on the National League side, uh, this stud here 107 home runs, 305 RBIs with a 372 average. Average infielder number one. Now, that's probably coincidence that they're both average infielder number one. But it's not coincidence they're both from the Power I teams. Okay, so we want to look at the strikeout leaders for pitchers, Clay Dog. All right, so let's look up statistics, pitching statistics. The strikeout leader had 156, several over 150. So yeah, power avoid K Mariners, power avoid K Phillies. Yeah, these are all Mariners and Phillies. So you were right. Everyone, all the pitching strikeout leaders were on the avoid K teams. Which makes sense because anyone who cannot strike out is on their team. So they're pitching to all the players who do strike out. So that makes sense. Um, okay. Oh, this is interesting. A lot of the win leaders are relievers because the starters are probably not pitching long enough to get a decision. And so the relievers are coming in getting the wins. Right. So if you're new to baseball or new to the game, you have to pitch 5 innings to qualify for the win. And so if you don't, then the official scorer can choose from among the other pitchers. So 20-3 with a 15.65 ERA. And gave up the reliever gave up a league leading 109 home runs. And despite having 20 wins, pitched bad enough to have a negative WAR, which is amazing. Yeah, 23 is a relief pitcher and still had a negative WAR because they were so bad. 111 innings pitched, 220 hits allowed. So about 2 hits per inning. Wow. Okay. I mean, we're having fun looking at these things because we've learned the thing we wanted to learn, which is that power I is the most powerful combination you can have with power. And we already knew the power from our experience. We knew the power is the most important attribute. And so, yeah, power I. And in tournament play, there are tons of power I aficionados. And I think this goes to show they are not wrong to be so into power I. Power I has been proven to be the biggest run producing and the biggest win producing combination. So I'm calling this experiment a success. Clearly proved it. If you look at these standings, it's only 2 iterations, but 40 games ahead and 41 and a half games ahead. We don't have enough data points to say that it's statistically significant, but it's far enough of a lead that I don't think it's going to change after we do a bunch of sims. The thing that is completely up in the air, though, is of the other three combinations, which is the best and which is the worst, because they're only separated by 7 games in each league, and the order is completely different. It goes BABIP, GAP, avoid K, and then GAP, avoid K, BABIP. So that's the thing. If we wanted to keep simming, is that's what we would probably be hoping to learn is, um, yeah, Clay Dog, that relief pitcher did win the RNG lottery for sure. Uh, and could not get positive WAR despite that. Um, I mean, we could run it back. It's still early in the stream. We could run it back. I don't think we're going to learn anything different. So Claydog says one thing he's wondered about is how to order the back of your lineup in a draft with different profiles. So if you all have two rating guys like Power I, that makes sense, but there's got to be better combos for the optimal lineup. So I think someone's did a statistical analysis. I think it actually might be mentioned in the book that's called The Book, which um, talks about like all the different kind of standard approaches to doing things like lineups and things like that, and platooning I think is covered. Um, Someone did a statistical analysis that said like your batting order is actually not that impactful compared to like having the right players in your lineup. Um, but that said, I know I've mentioned previously, and I think other people have said they do something similar where I focus on base percentage for spots 1 and 2, and then I focus on OPS for 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then I don't really care about the rest. I mean, I care, but I mean, it's whoever's left basically. And so the rationale is your 1 and 2 hitters get on base, and then your OPS hitters drive them in. I used to be completely on base percentage obsessed, but then I realized like my base runners weren't getting knocked in, and so I had to switch to add some actual hitters to drive them in, and not just people walking. It's fascinating. I also wonder how much OOTP numbers reflect that. I don't know about the OOT numbers, but I do think some of the modelers have modeled lineups, and I'd be curious to see if their results match that statistical analysis I was talking about, where it said like it almost doesn't matter. Um, that'd be an interesting question for Warbot, because I think they model things other than just individual cards. I think they do model things like lineups. I mean, it's easy enough to run this back. Maybe we should just run it one more time. It'd be pretty fast. All right, let me make sure we save this. Oh, the other thing too, I was going to ask for chat's help on over time is I've been working on a new save, and it's going to be, hold on, let me pull it up here real quick. I'm trying to build a roster of the best fictional baseball players of all time. So whether from like movies or TV, and so of course like Major League and Bull Durham, and let me see if I can find that. I started working on it last night. Oh yeah, fictional ball players. Here it is. Let me share this in the stream. Oh, Nolan says he's down for this. Oh, you and your friends did a fantasy draft with this team. That's awesome. Um, here's the. Okay, so uh, it's the position, the player, the movie, a description, and then the similar major league player. So the way I want to build the team is we'll import the most similar major league player, and then we'll use editor to make adjustments to make them more like the player in the movie. Um, so for example, Eddie Harris from Major League, he's the junk ball pitcher, um, right? Who has like all the stuff all over his body, and he's the one who drinks Joe Boo's drink. and then gets hit by a bat. We were thinking he would either be Gaylord Perry or one of the Necros. Oh, Steve Nebraska. That's right. Steve Nebraska, in addition to having an awesome fake movie baseball player name, is yeah, he threw an immaculate perfect game in the movie. And for those of you who aren't familiar, an immaculate inning is when a pitcher throws 9 pitches and strikes out 3 batters. So strike, strike, strike out, strike, strike, strike out, strike, strike, strike out. That's an immaculate inning, and that's rarely accomplished. And in this movie, he throws an immaculate game. So he throws uh 20 strikes out 27 batters on 81 pitches. I don't even know how to recreate that in OOTP. Um, it would basically be like 100 plus velocity is the highest you can go, and then we'd probably have to like max out all his other attributes. So I think like a couple places, um, and people who are interested should just like let me know, and I'll share this on the Discord or something. Um, the places where we could really use the help are like who is the major league player that we're going to use as the model. Um, and then some of the movies I've only seen once or I've never seen, and so I can use some help on those. Oh, pausing for ads. Nolan, you're still here though. Yeah, there's been a I was surprised how much interest there's been in this save. It seems like a topic people are um, interested in not just watching but participating in. So it's been great. Oh yeah, so the Sandlot's not in here yet because um, Paul Sporer had said he would help fill in the Sandlot folks. So I just thought, perfect. I'll just let him do it since I know he's way more into that movie than I am. Oh, Kenny Powers. Yes. And Gus from the Benchwarmers. So we can definitely put both of them in. But the Sandlot folks, I'm just gonna wait to see what Paul gives us. All right, I think we're back from the ad break. We were just talking during the break about a couple of players we need to add. Gus from Benchwarmers, which I haven't seen. So Nolan, I'm going to rely on you for info on that one. And then Clay Dog had a great one, which is Kenny Powers from Eastbound and Down. That is a great suggestion. Is Eastbound 2 words or 1 word in that show? I think it's two. Oh, Tim Lincecum is a great comparison for Mitch Kramer. Totally. Same hair. I don't know if you're on last night, Nolan, when I was talking about him, but if you ever watch that movie again, I mean, I don't want to ruin it for people, but if you ever start looking at how often he touches his nose and how often he puts his hair back behind his ears, now when I see that movie, that's all I can see is how often he does it, which is a bummer because for a kid actor, I think he does a great job, except for those two things. I like they're so distracting to me now. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. So we're gonna change Eastbound and Down to 1 word. Okay. Yeah, Tim Lincecum's great though. Um, and then I was dying when we came up with Ed because I don't know. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. We can put a chimpanzee in the game if we want to, but so I think it'll be fun putting the roster together. But I also think it'll be great to show people how to use editor and create players, import players, and change players to kind of match what you want to do in the game. And so it'll be a fun save, it'll be a fun roster build, but I think also like people will learn a lot on how to maximize using OOTP editor to do whatever you want in the game. Yeah, so for Steve Nebraska, I had late career Nolan Ryan, but I don't even think that's enough. It's got to be like, I mean, there is no comp, right? Steve Nebraska is in the movie at least is just like the Terminator. So I I think it's just maxing out the ratings. Um, but the problem with that is it's going to be boring when he pitches because it's just gonna be like, I mean, are we really going to watch 27 strikeouts every time he pitches? And then the other question I had was like, I want Kelly Leak and Amanda Wurlitzer from the Bad News Bears on the team. But of course, like, they're kids playing Little League, and this will be a major league season. So I'm assuming I would take what they did in Little League and like make it the major league equivalent of that. Because otherwise, they're either not going to play or they're going to get crushed, and that's not fun. You scale it, yeah. I think you have to scale it, right? Otherwise, there's no point in having them on the team. Okay, for Kelly Leak, I always thought Eric Davis can't play them at first when they're under 5 feet. So if you're new to OOTP, you get a fielding benefit at first base if you're over 6'5". So if they're under 5 feet tall, that's probably not good. Um, yeah. So for Kelly Leak, I always thought of him as like Eric Davis, like 5 tool player, tons of attitude, kind of cool, badass. Like I think of Eric Davis. And then for Amanda Wurlitzer, she's dominant. She talks about like her breaking ball, her curveball breaking. Can't remember if she says 3 feet or 6 feet, but um, I mean, all that makes me think of like early career Dwight Gooden, but I don't know if there's a better comp there that I'm not thinking of. And then the other one that I thought was genius was D Block was on last night, and I was like, hey, who's a good? Oh, Wakefield. Oh, interesting. Wait, did she throw a knuckleball though? I thought she was fastball curveball in that movie. Or maybe someone with like a good knuckle curve. The part of it is like I'm going to end up watching some of these movies again, which I welcome because they're all so great. Um, but last night I was like, who is Pedro Serrano from Major League? And D-Block had the great answer, which was a right-handed Adam Dunn, which I think is perfect. Oh, Nolan with a good idea. So Rowan Gardner is Chapman. Let me find the list. Okay. Aroldis Chapman, which is funny because I think Chapman came up for someone else too. Where was that? Oh, maybe I didn't write it down. And then what do you guys think about for Ricky Vaughn? I've got Mitch Williams. and not just because of the Wild Thing connection, but and then for Roger Dorn, I was throwing out a bunch of names, but then D-Block had a great one, which is Kevin Seitzer, because there are a few clues throughout Major League about like, you know, he's on the tail end of his career, he's just playing for a paycheck, but they talk about like how good he used to be, but it sounded like he was never like a superstar, like he was never a George Brett. But Kevin Seitzer sounded right to us, so we went with Kevin Seitzer for him. Oh, fun story time from Nolan. Awesome. The actor that played Henry Rowengartner does music. He writes his own and plays the American Pie soundtrack since he was in that movie too. Anyway, you got to meet him in a show, and no way, you brought a Henry Rowengartner rookie card and he signed it? That's awesome. So I gotta ask, how, what was his reaction when he saw the card? Did you think he did you think it was funny, or was he annoyed, or did he roll his eyes? I mean, yeah, that is cool, Claydon. That's a great story. Oh, he was the one that was. That's amazing. Oh, you bought it. I thought you said you brought it. You bought it. That's great. I thought you brought it with you. I was like, did that just blow him away? But that's awesome. Actually, while we're at it, let me go ahead and give a shout out here to the Nolan Network podcasts. So Nolan, also West Coast streamer, also tends to stream later in the evenings because it's Pacific time. He is currently streaming a 1900, I think, Pittsburgh save and a 1979 Mariners save. Lots of fun. He does a great job with the play-by-play. Highly recommend checking out his stream. In fact, Nolan, I can't remember. Do you just alternate between the 1900 and the 1979? The other cool thing is he's imported from the forums. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Catch Nolan after the Perfect Team World Series. That's right. Um, he's imported the Kingdom. So if you're into doing play-by-play for your games, or just like, playing out your games, you can there's a whole community on the OOTP forums that have built historic ballparks that you can import into the game, and so you can play your games in these historic ballparks. And Nolan has imported the Kingdom, and it looks awesome. And we actually both thought it was weird that the seats were red until I found a postcard from 1979, and the seats are red. So they're actually more realistic than like what you would think they would look like. They're actually even more kind of on the money. The only thing I'll warn you though is if you use one of those historic ballparks, the animations will get weird because I think the animations are designed for a certain set of ballparks that are in the game. And so if you import a ballpark that has different dimensions, you'll often see like outfielders running through walls and stuff. But I think that's an okay trade-off to get to play games in these great looking stadiums. Wait, I kept saying the forums, but Nolan, are those ballparks on Steam, or are they in the web forums? Because I know there's also a whole Steam community where you can download stuff too for the game. Oh, and so I was also looking at this spreadsheet still. There's a bunch of players from a league of their own that I think would be fun to bring in too. Oh, Claydog says you've never actually checked the Steam add-ons. Is there a lot there? So I actually don't know Claydog. That's why I'm asking Nolan because all the stuff I do in the base game, I'm just like messing it with from the inside. So I'm going to editor and changing things. I'm importing players. Everything I'm doing is internal to the game. I actually haven't taken advantage of all the external stuff. Oh, awesome. Nolan says there's only like four major files, but they have everything you'd ever want. Oh, I didn't even realize you get them all at once. I thought you had to like pick and choose them. That's awesome. One for uniforms, one for stadiums, one for historical face scan accuracy. Yeah, so if you're into watching your games play out in OOTP, that's the way to do it. Is to download those files and then import those into your game. I'm not such a stickler for like how the game looks. I'm doing all my stuff inside the game, but like it looks awesome when Nolan plays his games in the Kingdom. And the other thing too is if you care about watching your games as you play them, Doctor Dynastic often shows his camera settings. And so Dr. Dynastic does lots of play-by-play of historic games that he'll sim, and his games look great. I mean, he's got a announcer's voice because he used to do professionally broadcast, and so he does what are called spotting charts, where he before each game he'll prep out like different anecdotes that he knows about the players and different facts about them. So he'll do the spotting charts. He has his preferred camera settings for the game so that he gets the angles that he wants and he gets the camera movements that he wants. It's really cool. I just never have gotten that into it because I just care about the stats and importing players and stuff. But since I've been streaming more games instead of just streaming Sims, I've been paying more attention to it. But he's really good at that stuff. And then I really like what Nolan did with importing the stadium. So between those two things, I think you can have a really great visual experience streaming the game or just playing the game even. In fact, let me give Dr. Dynastic a shout out. So I feel like there's three main streamers that have been doing this for a while and are kind of top notch. Um, Laptop Hound, Dr. Dynastic, and EVC and NYC. I think of as kind of like the three. Uh, and I've only been watching OTP on Twitch since December, but to me, like, so to me, they've been there forever. But I think they do like they put on the best shows, they put on the most entertaining streams, and they all have like their things that they're really good at. And Dr. Dynastic is great at broadcasting games. Oh, someone just created an ultra in-depth Negro League community download. Do you know if that has all the right player profiles? Because one of the big frustrations I've run into is anytime I try to import a Negro League player, their ratings are just completely nerfed. And I have to go back and go into the season I want, take screenshots of their actual ratings, come back into the game, and then update their um Oh, I wonder if they've done what I've been doing one at a time. If someone has gone in and done that for the whole Negro Leagues, that would be awesome. Yeah, Nolan, if you find out more, please let me know. That would be great. Oh, Claydog says it makes a lot of sense. The first time he ever watched Dr. Dennis, he did Gamecast. Well, like, how does he know all the obscure player effects? Yeah. So he shows us what he used to do as a broadcaster, which is, and I wish I had a screenshot, but he has these sheets that he prints out and it has the lineup spots. And so if you think of like an 8 by 11, 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, the whole thing is divided up into like 9 rows for each each spot in the batting order. And so he'll write their name. He'll write like a pronunciation guide if it's a tough name to pronounce. And then as if he's preparing on stream, he'll show like he'll look them up in on Google or in Baseball Reference. I forget what that section's called. There's a what's that part of BREF where they have all the stories about players. He'll go into there. He'll ask chat like, what interesting thing do you know about these players? And he'll put all his notes together. And yeah, and so that's why when he broadcasts a replay of a game, it sounds amazing because he does all that prep. And of course, he's got the broadcaster's voice and everything, and he's definitely got like the chit chat down between plays, just because he was a professional at it and he's great at it. So it's super fun watching him, but um, the camera angle settings he uses are really cool. I just wish I knew them better. When I do my streams, everything I've seen him do just seems to go out the window, and I can't seem to remember how he did it. Um, but it's always they always look great. And then he's also the main person I've seen experiment with the filters too. So the OTP 25 has all these great uh, camera filters, and so you can make it look, like the 50s, where you even have like the line across the screen going up and down the screen. There's like filters from the 60s and 70s where the colors look like really vivid but kind of exaggerated. So there's lots of cool things you can do, both to make it look appropriate to the era, or I think also just to make it look better. But I think also I would gravitate towards like what looks like broadcasts from when I was a kid, like starting to follow baseball. If the link goes through, click that. Okay. Let me see if the link came through. It did not, but if you whisper it to me, Nolan, I will. Is that something I should share on the stream, or is it something I should show on the stream? Because if you whisper it to me, I can do either. Yeah, I do feel bad for Wayne and Waynham that he's still not getting his drops. I know one thing, Wayne and Waynham, I don't know if you've changed your username recently or anything, but I did that once and I had to go back and reestablish the connection between Twitch and OOTP. But that's the only other time I had problems with getting drops. Oh, it's a forum thread about that Negro Leagues mod. Yeah, if you whisper it to me, I can just share it in the chat. So I posted to the OT forum for it. Perfect. Also, if you're new to the game, one thing you'll notice is like a lot of times we'll abbreviate Negro Leagues as N, lowercase e, capital L. Partly I think just for um, speed, but also in the chat it'll prevent you from getting auto modded. Um, I mean, historically that's the name of the league, so I have no problem calling it the Negro Leagues, but it will often get auto modded. So okay, yeah, I have no problem, Nolan. Thank you for sending this. I have no problem sharing a forum link in the chat. I think that's fine. So here's the link Nolan provided. In fact, I'm going to click on it too. Let me put it up in the. Um, Well, I'm trying to size it right so I'm not cutting off anything. Okay, for Steam users, the mod is now available in the OOTP 25 workshop. And Nolan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the workshop is where you can find things like the stadiums and stuff, right? And so there's a link to the zip file for it. We're providing a user guide in PDF format. Um, I guess MLE is Major League equivalent. MLE version of the players are based on the work of Eric Schaulich. Visit his site. Oh, I think I've actually posted questions in the forum about importing new league players, and I think Eric is one of the people who very helpfully commented on some of those posts. Dr. Doom also. Special thanks to Dr. Doom for creating OTP database converter. All right, so it includes complete universe face gen pack, historical uniforms, logos, and jersey fonts, historical Major League stadiums. What about the stats or the profiles? Oh, this is cool. We have also included a custom engine file if you want more realistic distributions of innings pitched between starting pitchers and relievers. That's really cool. I didn't realize this. If you start a game between 1871 and 1883, the color barrier should already be off in OTP. However, OOTP will automatically turn the color barrier on at the conclusion of the 1883 World Series. You need to turn off the color barrier manually after the World Series ends in 1883. Huh. This is really cool. So all these players I know are already in the base game, in the database, because I've tried to import them before. But it sounds like if you want to play those seasons, this will help you do it more realistically. What isn't clear to me though is if they've corrected the problem of the players being nerfed. I'm assuming that's what this is. The MLE, I'm assuming means Major League equivalent versions, which is what I've been having to recreate every time. Yeah, Claydog, they really should patch that is right. And I've also mentioned to a few folks who work for OTP that when OTP 25 came out, Negro League stats weren't officially Major League stats yet. But now that they are, now that Major League Baseball has said Negro League stats are Major League Baseball stats, at least in OOTP 26, this problem better not be happening because I also would be surprised if it's not a violation of the contract with the Players Association to use those stats because we're then treating Major League stats, a subset of Major League stats, as minor league stats, and I don't think that's okay. Um, and even now, like I'm giving OTP the benefit of the doubt because they weren't official when OTP 25 came out. I'm willing to wait till OTP 26, but frankly, I'd like to see them patch it now during OTP 25 because they are official Major League stats now. And so, for people who don't know what we're talking about, I will show you an example from one of my sims. When I tried to bring in the I think it was 1933 Josh Gibson, the profile on the left is what came through the import. And I was like, well, this is clearly wrong. This is a season where Josh Gibson had an on base percentage plus slugging or OPS of over 1,000. And if you're new to the game, like 1,000 OPS is pretty much the benchmark for an amazing season. If think like Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, those seasons are 1,000 plus OPS seasons. And Josh Gibson in 1933 was 1,000. I think, yeah, over 1,000. It might be like 1,056 or something, 1056, something like that. There's no way you get to that with all these orange and yellow bars on the left. But when I went into 1933, went into the Negro Leagues, and went into his profile and editor, or went to his profile, the one on the right is what I saw. And so what's happening, I think, is when you import players into the major leagues from a substandard league, like a minor league, it automatically, we call it nerfing, it automatically like tamps down their ratings to say, okay, you're coming from an inferior league, so we have to reduce your ratings because you're coming to the major leagues. But with the recent announcement this spring, where Major League Baseball said Negro League stats are Major League stats, that nerfing should not be happening. They should just be treating them as equal stats. So the profile on the right is what should be coming through, unnerfed. Instead, we're getting the one on the left. Oh, Nolan says there's a huge discussion relating to the code of this game and what would happen if you started moving stuff around. We had to do the fact that there is no gender options in the game, which, by the way, I found a woman in the database. I don't know if Nolan knew that. There is a woman in the database. I'm super excited to have found her. The code of this game is super old, and it would break the game to change certain inputs. You would need to clone the code and make the changes on the side. Oh, hold on, ad break. So, Claydog, I don't know the Northwoods League at all. Is that a league you know? If that's awesome, if you knew the league she played in, that's extra cool. Okay, I think we're back from the ad break. So let me finish reading what Nolan had said. So the code of the game is super old and would break the game to change certain inputs. You would need to clone the code and make the changes on the side and dedicate time to add all of that. Couldn't do as a patch, would likely need a new base game. So you're talking about to add gender as a field, but what about to just correct the nerfing of the Negro League player profiles? It just seems like just treat the Negro League stats as Major League stats and just don't nerf them. I mean, I'm not a developer. I'm not a programmer, so I don't know if that's hard or not. But um, it doesn't sound to me. It doesn't seem like it should be that difficult. But again, I'm not a developer. Yeah, Clayton. Yeah, here's her. Let me show her profile. So this came about when I was doing here. I was doing this sim uh last week to commemorate Billy Bean. Billy Bean passed away last week. And for those of you who don't know, Billy Bean and Glenn Burke were the only two uh, openly gay players who had played Major League Baseball. Since then, a third, I think TJ House is his name, has played and come out. But I want to do a sim to honor Billy Bean, and so I found this article with 14 professional baseball players who were openly gay. Most of them were minor leaguers because there's only three who've been major leaguers. And as I was adding them to the game, uh, oh, Claydog, thank you for the kind words. I'm glad you enjoyed the tributes. Yeah, Ezra's tribute is the one that inspired me to do something too. I'm often getting ideas for my Sims from things going on in the game. And when I saw Ezra talking about Billy Bean, I was like, I have to do something to commemorate this amazing person who did so much for the game of baseball and to make people playing the game feel comfortable in the game. And this game's been around for over 100 years. This game of baseball. There's no way only three players have been gay, which means there are a lot of players who haven't come out as gay, and whether it's because they're not comfortable, because for whatever reasons, Billy Bean was trying to do his best to make sure people were comfortable being themselves. And I think that's an honorable thing. And I wanted to commemorate his life and what he did for baseball and for people. And but anyway, in doing that, I came across something I thought was amazing because I didn't know she existed in the game. Um, but Clay don't say it was so emotional. Loved Ezra doing that and being human while he showed it. Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you check out the VOD from the day. I think the day after Billy Bean passed, which would have been last Tuesday or Wednesday, I think. He showed a great video uh, that had been done, by a third party, but profiling Billy Bean. I learned this game teaches me new things all the time. I had no idea about Billy Bean and Glenn Burke. Um, I'm glad Ezra did that because that's how I learned about it. When I heard Billy Bean passed on the news, I thought it was Moneyball Billy Bean, former Mets prospect Billy Bean, which is Billy Bean with an E at the end. Uh, but instead, it was this Billy Bean, and yeah, and so I learned a lot about the game. I learned a lot about Billy Bean as a person, uh, and frankly, I think we all learned a lot about Ezra as a person. And I like how Ezra's always championing diversity in the game, not just in the game of baseball, but in the OOTP community. And so, yeah, so it all added up to me wanting to do something. And the reward was finding in the database something completely unexpected. So there have been a lot of conversations lately about why is there not a gender field in the game? And in the course of trying to add these players into my sim, I found left-handed pitcher Isla Borders, um, who is I believe, the first female baseball player to win a Division I baseball scholarship. Um, I read her profile during the stream from this article of these 14 players. Just amazing trailblazer, but she's in the database, in the historical database right now. You can import her into your sim. She played in the independent leagues. Claydog mentioned that she played in the Northwoods League, which I didn't catch, but I looked at her profile in Baseball Reference because I needed to figure out what year version of her to import. And yeah, so I had no idea. And now it makes you want to look to find other female ball players who might be in the database already. So this game's always surprising me, and these sims are always surprising me. So in the course of, usually it's the sim itself that some of the outputs surprise me, but in this case it was um, while I was building it. Oh, you know what? I may have said it because at the time I was probably looking through her profile and looking at her BREF. Um, but if I said it, it was in passing, so it didn't stick in my mind. So it's very possible. Actually, why don't we just pull her up on BREF right now? I was more just blown away that she was in the database. I was so happy to find that. So yeah, Isla Borders is her name. Oh, and now my BREF has decided to freeze up. So maybe, how about this one? This is where I got the picture. So there's a bunch of videos too talking about Isla Borders. There's a 60 minutes profile. Um, so you can check those out. Let's see if I can get to it this way without freezing up. There we go. There we go. That worked. Oh yeah, Northern League. not North. So yeah, Duluth, Superior, Madison. Yeah, it does include Madison. Yeah, so she pitched in that league from 1997 to 2000. Oh no, 2000 was it for Zion in? Oh, I did not mean to press that. 2000 was in the Western League. Yeah, before your time. Yeah, I was shocked to find her in the database, like pleasantly so. But so yeah, you could literally import her right now. She's in the database, just sitting there. But yeah, so I'm gonna like Nolan, I'm gonna dig into that Negro Leagues file too to see what's going on there. Because if we can avoid this happening, right, this Josh Gibson getting nerfed problem, it would be great. Yeah, Nolan's right. Essentially, if you have a BREF page, it can be brought in. That's probably accurate. Mm. Oh, and yeah, the way that works too, as long as we're talking about this, let me just show people. In BREF, when you pull up a player, in the URL is their player ID. This is the same player ID that OOTP uses, right? So for her, it's border 001 ILA. Now, for that's because she's a minor leaguer. She never played Major League Baseball. For Major League players, it's the first five letters of the last name, the first two letters of the first name, and then 0 1 is the default. Unless someone's had that letter combination before, then you get 0 2 or 0 3 and so on. But yeah, Nolan's right. If you're in BREF, you should be able to be brought into the game. Yeah, Clay Dog. It's the easiest way to pull their pull anybody's player ID. Now in the game, you can find the player ID in editor. But the problem is you might not always be able to find that specific player in the save you're playing. Here, let me show you. I think I can try to show you what that looks like. And I'm noticing my sound is getting just starting to cut out. So I'm going to try to close some windows here and see if that helps. All right, I closed a few things to see if that would help. But in the game, if you go to these are all fictional players. Shoot. And I don't want to close this yet. But if you go to any player, if you go to any real player and you go to editor, right here in this field will be their historical ID, which will be the same as their BREF ID. And then you can use that to import players. And if you want to know how to import a whole roster, just almost any of my VODs will have me importing a roster of players. You just create a text file with a comma delimited list of players, and you can import all of them at once. So it's player ID, comma, year, comma, and then the three-letter abbreviation for the destination team. And you just have a whole list of them, and it'll import all of them. If you don't want to send them to a team and just want to send them um, to the free agent pool, which is the alternative, just leave off that last comma in the three-letter abbreviation. Here, I'll show you one of my here, I'll show you this one. This one is interesting too because you can import multiple versions of the same player. So this is I did a save with Barry Bonds. Uh, the whole league was 2001 Barry Bonds, where he hit 73 home runs, and all the pitchers in the league were 2000 Jose Lima, who was one of the worst gopher ball seasons of all time. And so I had to do a bunch of editing versions of Barry Bonds, so I only imported him once, but I wanted all the Jose Limas at once, and so I just copied and pasted that line multiple times. So you just create a file like this, and then output it as a text file, .txt file, and that's what you can feed into OOTP to input a bunch of players at once. But yeah. So I will be curious to see. Nolan, thank you for that, letting me know about that and sending me the link. The if they've fixed that, that would be great. Um, but frankly, I still think OTP should be fixing that in game and not be relying on a workaround because Negro League stats are now Major League stats, and I think it's important that people acknowledge that. So, all right, I'll get off my soapbox on that now. So I think we're done with the sim. I think we're going to start winding down the stream too. But just as a reminder, Power I is definitely the deadliest combination for generating runs and winning games. Nobody wants to spend too much time on Jose Lima. No, especially the 2000 version. The crazy thing is, in 1999, he was an all-star and I think a 20-game winner. And for whatever reason, in 2000, he just turned into a home run, a batting practice pitcher. 48 home runs allowed, 2.2 home runs per 9 innings. Crazy. I've never seen a turnaround like that. And I don't think he was hurt because he pitched a complete season the next season too. And towards the end of his career, he had one more bounce back season where he went like 13-9 or something. But yeah, I've never seen like a meltdown like that before. It's crazy. All right, so I'm calling this sim a success. We definitely confirmed that Power I is just a devastating combination. Um, the rest of the combinations all over the place, very closely packed together. I think the other noteworthy thing about this sim was that when you go look at the league stats, while Power I team dominated and scored the most runs, um, they did not hit more home runs. They actually hit the second fewest home runs in the AL experiment. In the NL experiment, they hit the fewest home runs. So Power I doesn't let your players hit more home runs, but it makes them score a ton more runs, and that's really what led to the wins. Claydog says, makes you think I would love to see a home run derby batter bring in an opponent pitcher that he shreds to pitch for him. That would also be like the ultimate diss too, I think. You might see the first hit by pitch in a home run derby if they did that. So yeah, so that was an interesting quirk of this that it's not on the back of home runs that they're doing this. It's the added base runners from the walks. Um, so yeah, a couple of really good insights here. I think helpful in both base game, but also in your perfect team play. Um, at least in perfect team though, it's not groundbreaking. I mean, Power I has been a thing for a long time, ever since I've been, and I think longer. It's just a card shape that people gravitate to. But now I think we have data that supports um, that shape and not just like an intuition or a gut feel. Yeah, Charge the Mound and Home Run Derby, great TV for sure. Um, it's funny you bring that up though, because in the previous experiments, when we're testing these attributes in isolation, it was interesting. The power team, of course, hit the most home runs, but also got hit by the most pitches. And so it made me wonder if the game is programmed to have pitchers retaliate somewhat when someone like goes yard against them, is it more likely then that they'll get hit by a pitch the next time up? Um, it could just be natural variance and random number generator, but it was interesting that the team that hit the most runs, home runs, also got hit by the most pitches. All right, so I'm gonna definitely call this sim a success, and I'm gonna start looking for someone to raid into. I noticed that the Cheeky was on earlier, but looks like he was on playing a different game. But then I noticed he was on streaming OOTP, but he is now offline. So let me see if I can find someone streaming OOTP. Uh, Claydog wouldn't be surprised if they hard coded it, but it's definitely within the realm of plausible. Yeah, I wasn't gonna do a bunch of sims though, just to see if uh if it was an actual thing or just RNG. Yeah, Nolan, you're right. I usually am the last call, but just wanted to see. And I do appreciate Italics during the raid. I've raided into him a couple times. I know like we're a drop in the bucket to his viewership, but I do appreciate him remembering and returning the favor. That was great. And of course, I also always appreciate Ezra Denny raiding into us so frequently. Definitely gets our stream off to a good start every night. Yeah, we're the only ones streaming out of the park baseball. So let's look for other sports. Let's see if there's other baseball first. If Baffle were on, I'd definitely stream it right into him. But would you rather go into another baseball game like MLB The Show, or would you rather go into like um the college football 25? Send you to a musician. Interesting. I do like that Cheeky used to look for like creatives to raid into when there's no one streaming OTP. Like we went into a we went to someone doing cross stitching. We went into a piano player. All right, let me find someone doing music. Uh, the other thing I like is that Cheeky looks for people with like fewer viewers to rate into. And it's great because like they're definitely super psyched to get a big raid. There's also the person I like to stream raid into sometimes too is not on, but there's this guy walking from the southern end of Japan to the northern end of Japan. He's an American guy. I think he's like in his early 30s. He's been in Japan for about a decade. So he speaks passable Japanese, but he streams in English. And he's on like day 113 or something of this walk. And almost every day he walks, all day, chatting to, talking to chat, and stopping for meals. You get to see like the countryside, parts of Japan most people never see. Claydog also likes watching some of the late night poker players. Okay, I'm looking for music, but it's a lot of like people looks like they're DJing. Yeah, the walk stream is great. He's not on right now, unfortunately, but Claydog, if you ever want to check him out, I'll definitely give him a shout out here. Shout out, I think it's Sensei Martian. I think there's an underscore there. Yeah, that's him, Sensei Martian. Yeah, he's awesome. He's a super nice guy. Um, he's real respectful of like the people he runs into during his journey. He doesn't like bother people unless they talk to him first. Oh no, you saw some dude with a guitar. What's the username? I'll check it out to make sure their chat's not follower only. And I mean that cross stitcher's on. If you all want to meet the cross stitcher, she's really cool. You want to know the cross stitcher? Okay, it's Ophi and Stitch. She is she streams in English. Um, but she's Palestinian, has grown up in several different countries, including the US, and currently lives in Taiwan. Okay. All right, Nolan, that's all the encouragement I needed is one person to say they want to see the cross stitcher. One of my favorite things too is she misread my name the first time, but she still refers to me as Franchise, which always makes me laugh. All right, we're gonna rate Ophi and Stitch. Thanks everyone for hanging out. I hope you enjoyed the stream. If you're new to OTP, I hope you learned something helpful. For those of us who've been hanging out doing this for experiment went very well. It's uh it's rare that we see just from one sim such clear results. And we'll see you next time. I'm gonna take tomorrow off as usual. I might do a quick stream just to help bridge from Ezra to Max in case he needs some time to put his kids to bed. But otherwise, I'll be back on Thursday. I'm on almost every night at 10 p.m. Pacific time. And yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Say hello to Ophi and Stitch. This will be funny. I don't think I've rated her since that first time, so I wonder how she'll react to having so many people coming at once. Oh, Clay Dog, thanks for the kind words, man. Yeah, I'm just glad you decided not to lurk too. You added a ton to the stream, and I hope you keep doing it.